What's up, guys? Today I got a lot of questions to revisit the Galaxy S10, and boy, was I just really blown away by the S10 series here in 2024. Man, it has just aged really well. Now obviously you probably shouldn't buy a Galaxy S10. There are other better options out there for relatively cheap, you know, the S21 FE, even the S20. I would just get something a little bit newer, of course, but these phones do have, you know, it just has a really nice premium feel even in 2024. It really is nothing old about this phone. I'm just absolutely loving everything about it, and I personally think this S10 series in general was just peak Samsung before they started to follow kind of Apple with removing the headphone jack, kind of selling you on earbuds, and removing SD card support, selling you on higher configurations and blah blah blah. But yeah, I think this was just like prime Samsung, and I'm going to show you why, because there's absolutely nothing that this phone can't do in 2024. It still performs excellent, even today with getting pretty much no updates or anything like that. So I want to go ahead and talk about the actual design here. So the Galaxy S10 has, I think the design has aged a little bit, of course. Now I think it still looks pretty nice, but yeah, you can definitely see the age. It does look like an older phone, of course, here. But what I really like about this phone is not only is it very comfortable to hold, but it's like super light. It is crazy thin and just very light, like almost feels like paper compared to like the newer phones today. So that's really cool. So you got the glass back, it's got the aluminum frame, and of course, you know, Samsung has moved on to the matte finish for good, because you know, you see all these fingerprints that you get, and again, this is depending on the color, but yeah, I like the design on here. IP68 dust and water resistant, still has that nice premium design and feel to it, and also you have the headphone jack down below, which again, it's a very small minority of people these days who like headphone jacks. I'm one of them, because I'm somebody who kind of loses the earbuds a lot. So sometimes, like, you know, I just prefer like some wired earbuds. But yeah, I do really like the design here. Now also, what I think is pretty interesting is that Samsung has been so ahead in screen technology that the S10 display still looks like a new display that came out this year. It is extremely nice to look at. It's full 1440p, which Samsung does not do anymore on the smaller model. So say for instance like the S24, that has a 1080p screen. This has a full 2K display as well too. That's another thing that kind of makes it unique for this size of a phone at 6.1 inches. It's dynamic AMOLED HDR10 Plus with 550 for the PPI. So it's an extremely sharp panel as well too. The text and everything is very clear. Now it is a curved panel as well, which I do like curved screens. I think it gives the phone like just a premium look and feel to it. But yeah, the colors on here are absolutely fantastic. The only thing that you could really say has aged about the display is the lack of any type of high refresh rate. But what's interesting about these flagship phones is that the 60 hertz on these phones, it's pretty smooth. Nothing about, like, even coming from, you know, using 120 hertz phones, the 60 hertz on here is very smooth. So it's not like it feels really bad. So I think also that's very interesting in itself, that these phones are still so fast and smooth that you don't even really notice the lack of 120 hertz. Well, I won't say you don't notice it, but it's not extremely noticeable, like, oh, it's gonna just look really bad. I could definitely use, like, you know, this phone and not really care that it doesn't have 120 hertz. So I thought that was interesting as well. So I think Samsung just did a fantastic job with the screen in general. Now, what you will find even more surprising on the S10 is that gaming on here is still really good. You can find these phones for like $80, $100 just as a kind of like a burner phone. But if you're on like an extreme budget, again, I would get something newer. But if you got like $100, I mean, you could get this phone and it plays PUBG better than the Galaxy A55. You can play at HDR Extreme, and it's just absolutely beautiful. The graphics, and along with the display being so high res, it is a really good experience. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And the Snapdragon 855, what's really cool about this particular chipset is that it doesn't really heat up like the, some of the newer ones. But I just found that interesting that this phone is still extremely fast, even when gaming, very well optimized. And yeah, so that's why I said this S10 series was just really peak Samsung. I mean, this came out in what I believe 2019 and even in 2024. And honestly, I don't see this thing slowing down next year, so even in 2025. I mean, this is just still a very fast phone. So I think the overall speed, gaming performance is still just very fast on here. I think very, very impressive. So you can definitely still game on here, no problem. I haven't really run into any issues with anything as far as, relating to gaming on here. Now let's talk about the cameras on the S10, because I thought it was pretty interesting. You would be surprised that the photos come out pretty well on the S10. It has a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel telephoto. It does 3 times optical and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K 60 on the front and back, and then it has a 10 megapixel selfie cam. So I was really surprised at the image quality of the S10 here, especially the main lens. I thought was just taking some really great photos. I think the only thing that has really aged about this phone is that low light photography is, you could definitely tell, it's an older phone. And also the color is just a little bit too vibrant. Like, it's a little bit too colorful. Video is still pretty decent. Like I said, in good lighting, this still takes some really, really good shots. So I still thought that the image quality was pretty impressive for the most part. So overall, I think the cameras still are really good. Like I said, very impressive for, such an older phone. I did think that the selfie cam, again, like the older Samsung phones, it kind of like does like the skin softening thing. It kind of looks soft, and your skin tone is definitely a little bit lighter as well too. But yeah, that was pretty much my only thing with the cameras. But yeah, I was pretty impressed overall with image quality. Let's check out these speakers at max volume. Very good sounding speakers on this device. Very nice balanced sound on here. The fingerprint scanner is also really fast as well too, still faster than a lot of mid-range phones. It has the ultrasonic one, so it's pretty much, instant feeling. And yeah, so the software on here, now the last update this got was One UI 4.1 Android 12. It doesn't really feel outdated really at all. It still has a lot of the essential stuff here. Still has the same look with the colored icons. You can still kind of, you can still use good luck and stuff like that. Nothing has really, it just doesn't feel that different from One UI now. That's why I say a lot of people, a lot of people say software updates are overrated. I think to an extent, like when you have a big software update like the Galaxy AI features that are coming to the Samsung phones now, I think that's like a pretty big update, because it is kind of like the future of the software on these phones now. But besides that, it really just feels like, using a phone with One UI 6 for the most part, if we're being completely honest. Now, a lot of things about this phone that you will really like. Again, the headphone jack, the SD card support on here. You get 128 gigs of internal storage, 6 gigs of RAM on here. Like I said, very fast and snappy. And you pretty much have all your, flagship features. Samsung desktop support still here. All that good stuff. So it's just very interesting how well this phone has aged. Now, of course, battery life on here is kind of okay. Even, for today, the battery life is just, it's all right. It's got a 3000 milliamp hour battery or a 3400 milliamp hour battery. So it's kind of a small battery on here. So I think this phone these days, maybe if you get a new battery, you can get like 5 hours of screen on time. But that's typically what I'm getting with this phone. And the battery life is okay. Like I said, it's definitely a phone you have to charge if you play games a lot. Like I said, even if you replace the battery, I still think the battery life is just okay. But what's cool about this phone is that you do have wireless charging and reverse wireless charging as well. Now you do have 15-watt wire charging, which again is kind of a little bit slow for 2024. But besides that, man, I've just been impressed with the S10. There's a lot to like about this phone. The screen, how thin and light it is as well too. And then also the Snapdragon 855 or the chipset on here it is ridiculously fast. So what do you guys think of the S10? Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.